everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. The holidays are upon us. I hope you had a phenomenal Thanksgiving with your family. Those of you that celebrated Thanksgiving, because, not everybody did. And those of you that decided to go solo, before the Thanksgiving, I did this show and I had a guest, Joe Lamb, and we talked about people walking in their authenticity and choosing to go solo and not necessarily, join the collective simply because different personal issues. But in order to do that, you have to have a certain sense of self, knowing who you are, being authentic, and choosing you above everything. And for whatever reason you may have decided, that is okay. But for you that had a big shebang with the family, that is also great, because it's just wonderful to see families together and see families in unity, sharing, and so forth, as long as it's genuine and authentic. We find so many relationships today that is so performative. And, because I am on this journey of self-discovery and this whole passion about being authentic, I observe so keenly. And when I have conversations with people, I can determine if it's performative or not. And it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. It's just that if you don't know your identity, if you don't know who you are, then we are always performing to the we're always performing to the traditions or conventional norms, or the identity that's been imposed upon us by the social structure. And in most cases we don't even know it. We just follow the traditional narratives for our lives, and that's what I kind of have a grain that goes against that, simply because it's not a place where there's genuine happiness and joy and peace and freedom. And that is what we all want: the freedom to be, the freedom to self-express, to have self-expression where you can be yourself and not having to walk on eggshells, regardless of who you're with. Of course, you always use discretion, but you can be yourself and you can self-express, so that you don't have to make up stories or say no when you want to say yes, or say yes when you really need to say no, and things of that. It's just really growing. And it's not just growing, it's evolving. I was talking to my husband this morning and I said, you know what I have seen my life, how I am actually evolving. And the more I evolve, I learn so much about myself. And it's kind of like I really get to like me a whole lot more. The more I evolve and the more I learn about myself, I get to like me more. And I hope you are having the same experience, because when you can appreciate yourself and love yourself, admire yourself, recognize, admit, acknowledge your strength, your skills, your expertise, your worth, your value, your boundaries, and all that. It's like you are packaged with attributes and characteristics that are uniquely yours. And no one can take that away from you. And, when I talk about boundaries, someone had issues with that word recently that I came across. And, when I say boundaries, I know for me, boundaries is not just what you set for other people. Boundaries is what you impose upon yourself as well. Like me, one of my boundaries is to mind my own business. One of my boundaries is not to ask personal questions. Like when I meet someone, someone would say, well, where do you work? Or what kind of work do you do? Or where do you live? Or, how old are you? Those are personal questions that I do not engage in. Now, if somebody gives me that information, that's fine. I have nothing to do with it. But I put a lot of boundaries on myself. I don't go where I'm not invited. I monitor my relationships, and I've been doing that lately to make sure that they are reciprocal, because I find that as time goes on, we get so busy with our lives, and those of you um, that are still with kids around, life can be busy, and but still, we prioritize the things that are important to us. So when I pick up the phone and call you, it's because I'm thinking of you, and you hold a place in my heart, in my mind, and so forth. And after a while, if it's not reciprocal, then you understand that that season of the relationship is over. It's over. That season of the relationship is over. So it all depends. And those are the boundaries that I have imposed upon myself. So boundaries are not a bad thing. Boundaries is something that you impose upon other people and you put it upon yourself so that you can protect your peace. That's the whole idea, to protect your peace. I was listening to someone earlier today, and they were talking about their own relationship and how they have to protect their peace. And they were saying something about in the relationship, they are carrying emotional labor. They're carrying an emotional labor contract that they did not sign up for. And when I heard that statement, I paused and I continued to listen to hear what this person had to say. And she evidently, this person, we'll call her Brenda. Evidently, she's been in a 15-year marriage, and uh, shares that she has just awakened to the fact that she has been carrying emotional, the emotional labor of the relationship. And what do I mean by that? When you're in a relationship, I know, to me, it's a partnership, and a partnership. You see each other, you see your partner, and there is respect above all. You that are familiar with my show, you know that I don't put a lot of stock in the love basket. That happens when there's respect. But if you, emphasize love a whole lot, in most cases, it's performative and there's no respect and so forth. Anyway, but the point is, she discovered, one day it dawned upon her, and she said, anyway, she woke up to the fact, and she says, I'm in an emotional labor contract relationship, and didn't even realize it. What did she mean by that? She said that in the household, they have two or three kids, and she did everything: appointments, games, doctor's appointments, meals. She planned every meal, everything for the house, any repairs, any major purchase, any vacation. She did it all. And she shared that she would come home from work and share something with her husband, and he would not have an opinion on it at all. She would just she said she finds herself saying, did you hear what I say, or what do you think about that, or do you have an opinion on that, and so forth. And there was no response. And she said whenever they had a disagreement, she was always the one to break the ice and to go to try to fix it, to fix the disagreement, to fix the cold shoulders, to fix the attitudes and all of that kind of stuff. And she was the fixer upper in the relationship. And she was talking to a lot of women, and a lot of women related to that. And she said, after a while, she realized that she was carrying more of the burden. And she said, wait a minute, this is not a partnership, because a partnership in a relationship is not 50-50 on the bills. I don't believe in that anyway, but that's not a partnership. A partnership is sharing just about everything, and sharing also the emotional aspect of the relationship, is sharing the emotional thing. And whenever there is disagreement, a misunderstanding, whatever, that you both want to come together to resolve it, and not one keeping silence until the other one makes a move to say, let's talk about it and so forth. She said they had nothing to talk about. She said there was nothing, even when they had major purchase, she's the one that brought it up. If there was something to be done to the house, the roof, the this, that, whatever, she's the one that brought it up. And he was just there. He would come home from work. And when she comes home, he would be watching TV or playing games or things like that. And after a while, she got tired. She realized that she had been in but in the meantime, it's interesting because she said that they did things, of course, they were involved in the community and church and all that. And they did things like date night. They kept their date night but they kept it religiously. They did the date night thing, and that was it. It was performative. She said there was no connection. There was no interaction. There was no partnership. There was no ICU. And ICU, which means, she said one time they were going out and she got all dressed up and looking good and so forth. And she was hoping that her husband would, she said, no, she said, I was hoping that when I go out, somebody, another man, would look at me and tell me how beautiful I look. She said, not because I wanted to do anything outside of my marriage, but she says, I didn't get it from my husband. And I was just hoping that he would see me. And, I got to think about that. And, with a little thing, and I remember in my marriage years back, we had a period there where this emotional labor concept kind of filtered in, wherein I did a lot of things and so forth, and my husband was on cruise control, and we had a conversation about that. And of course, we both woke up. It didn't linger too long, but these are things that when you see it, and if you both want to have a fruitful and flourishing relationship, these are things that you must address. Because if you don't address it, guess what? It will grow and grow and grow, and then you will get to where you don't communicate at all, unless it's about the kids or something else. But as far as being able to come to your partner and talk about the business of the household or the business of self, wanting to share about yourself and to get their take, and vice versa, reciprocity. Unless you put a concerted effort in that, it can go awry. Any relationship. And what happens is that I know for women, if somebody doesn't hear you, if somebody doesn't see you, we are more sensitive to that. To be in a performative relationship, that doesn't bode well with women. We don't like that. We like action and real connection. But it got me thinking about this whole thing about marriage, and which my thoughts about marriage is totally different today than it was years ago. I think two people can be partnered together and live have a thriving relationship, live a wonderful life. Because marriage, the institution of marriage, we know, if you look it up, we know that it's a social construct. And, it's just something we put on paper for different reasons. Anyway, the point is, you just wonder, how does that happen? How does people either fall out of interest? And my thing, the reason I am big on respect, this respect factor, is because when you respect someone, I know at work, when I was in corporate America, you respect the people that work for you, and you respect the people that you work with. And when you're about to implement some kind of change or some kind of policy or whatever, rules, regulation, you are going to discuss it with your team to see what works best for the team. And, a team member may have a better idea than you. So you want to really factor in everyone that's involved. And when you are in a partnership, when you are in a relationship, when you are in a marriage, you have got to really see your partner. As a matter of fact, you've got to pay attention because and not wait until something is broken. You've got to pay constant attention. It's like the stock market. It's just like your portfolio. You give it attention. You see how the market is moving, and you want to move this stock, and you want to buy this, and you want to sell this. You are involved. Why? Because it's important to you. Well, the same goes for your relationship and your marriage. But what really surprised me was the amount of women that chimed in and say, you are talking about exactly what I am going through. There's so many women and women that are saying, yeah, I'm in a 25-year-old marriage, and it's the same thing. I can say something and there's no response, there is silence. And that's really interesting, simply because it's either they're doing too much or they're accepting too little. And that's not a good balance in a relationship. That is not a good balance at all. And comes a point where you have to protect your peace. You want to protect your peace. You want to stay in your calmness. You want to be mindful of you. And that's why I say it's so important that you know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, you go through life settling and accepting. You go through life compromising. You go through life performing for others, performing because of tradition, performing because of conventional norms, performing because of religious doctrine. You go through life on a performative basis, and you've got to break those shackles. And when I mentioned earlier about this whole process of evolving, it's not something that happens overnight. It continues to happen. And the more you seek to learn about yourself, and the more you pay attention to the things that are happening around you, it's like things will begin to unfold in your favor. When the student is ready, is when the teacher shows up. That is a fact. It will show up in so many different ways. It just shows up. I know that because it's a lot of things lately. As I mentioned, I believe I'm on a different timeline ever since I came back, because I had time to reflect and pause and meditate and all of that, and just really, and have conversations with my husband, and just to see where we are at. And it's just great, because when you become mindful of that, of what's happening to you, what's happening to yourself, and how you are transforming into a better version of yourself. The person I was last year, I don't even know that person. As a matter of fact, sometimes I go back and watch some of my shows, my videos, and like, things have changed from how I used to think, what I used to believe, the things I used to emphasize and be mindful of, and so forth. Things have changed. I notice now, and I know we're talking about relationships, but I notice now, we're talking about the self now, because the totality of you is what you bring into a relationship, based on the level of knowledge that you have of self. That's why I always say that you should function by the truth you know about yourself. And what I am finding lately is when people talk about manifest, I want to manifest this, I want to manifest that, I want to manifest, whether it's something material or relational or whatever it is, I want to manifest a spouse or, partner, whatever. It's not, to me, what I have learned is that it's not that I want to manifest something from the outside in, from the external in. That's not how I have discovered that it works. What I have discovered is that when a desire arises within me, it's because that thing is waiting to align with my desire. It's vibrational frequency. So when I desire something, when I want something, and I've shared before, like when we were going to travel, I always say that I get there before we get there, and that's because my frequency, my energy goes to I always do research, check out the places, and have ideas what we want to do, where we want to go, and all of that, and I take myself there mentally. So eventually when it happens, it generally happens the way I perceived it, or in most cases, it comes with a lot of flowers, with a lot of perks and things like that. As a matter of fact, we had a situation when we disembarked from our cruise. It was interesting because we had an early start. We had to get up like at 4:00 in the morning, and we were able to get ready, go and have a little bit of breakfast, and be out of the dining room like at 6:30 in the morning, because we had to be at the terminal at about 7, because we had a private transfer arrangement, and that he would have been ready to leave at 8:00. So we were there. We were at the terminal, and this is the Customs and Immigration Terminal. When the ship docks, and there's the immigration terminal, and and you have to go get your bag, but you don't go pick it up. There's a whole process that happens, and there are baggage helpers there with carts, and they would come get your bag and walk you out to your ride, whatever mode of transportation you're going to use to leave the pier. So my husband and I came down at 7:00 because we're not going to be late with Mr. Linox and or myself when it has to do with involving other people's time and things like that. So we came down. We were standing there. There are people that are standing around or sitting in the area there, waiting for their bags, and there's a whole sea of bags that they're that they're allocating in different groups. And ours, we had a tag that said 32, group 32. So my husband and I, we were standing there. There was no place to sit. So we were standing there, and this guy, tall guy, locked eyes with my husband. And, my husband said, I saw that he looked at me. And so he walks over to my husband and he said, what color are your bags, sir? And so I said, no, we are fine. Our bags, we use it to put our carry-on on top of it and roll it out ourselves. What I was actually saying was that we don't need a cart. We don't need that. He said, that's not what I'm asking. He said, I want to help you with your bags. Imagine that. All these people that are there, all these people that are there standing, waiting for their bags and waiting for help and whatever, they have to bring the bags from the ship and so forth. And then they line them up. There's just a sea of a lot of bags. And so we had taken, once we packed our bags the night before, we had taken pictures of our suitcases, all angles. We took pictures, and the bag tag and the tag with the number and our personal bag tags and so forth. So we showed him. We said, this is my, this is a smaller size, and this is his, and this is the other one. and he looked at the pictures, and he went and he went looking, and he found the first bag. He found the first bag. And so he brought it over to us because we could not go beyond a certain area to retrieve our bags, or any bag for that matter. It's kind of orchestrated and set up in such a way that whatever. So he had the authority to go beyond that barrier to retrieve the bags and bring it. So he did, and he brought one bag. He went back to look for the other bag, and which is like a champagne color and so forth, with a distinct leather tag that you could. So he went looking, and he couldn't find it. So he came back and he asked me, he says, "Can I see that picture again?" So I showed him, and what he did, he went into other areas, area row 35, with tags, and come to find out it was misplaced, mispositioned. Instead of them putting it in area row 32, they put it in the row 35. Anyway, he brought it over to us, and we were just very, of course, my husband, he really deserved a great tip. So we did that, and then you leave customs, and that's fascinating now because you don't even have to show your passport. All of it is facial recognition. And so we walked out and got on the bus, and we had a 5:00 flight, 5:15. And we booked it that way because we didn't want to be rushed. We didn't want to be rushed. We want to be able to come out and so forth. So anyway, but our ride, the private transfer ride that we had was scheduled to leave at 8:00. And you've got to be there, otherwise it's going to cost you a whole lot more money for that service. So we walked out, and again, we thought we might go to the airport and spend the day at the Admirals Club, which that would have been 8 hours, because by then we got to the terminal like at 9:00, and the flight would have left at 5:15. Our flight, the one that we were scheduled to return home on. It was scheduled for 5:15, and we thought we'll just spend the day at the Admirals Club and just kick back. It's a very comfortable place to do things. You can there's you can do whatever. It's a matter of fact, they even have rooms where if you want to go sleep, you could rent a room and go sleep in these little rooms that they have. A whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, it would have been a comfortable place to stay if you had 8 hours to wait for your flight. But then we got to the airport, and my husband said, why don't we try to get on an earlier flight? It had never even occurred to me, because we got at the airport at 9:00, and it never occurred to me. And I thought, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't even think that we would have been able to do that, because number one, obviously we would have had to pay to upgrade the ticket, but only providing there were seats on the flight. So the agent tells us to go to the special service desk, and we went, and the guy that we got, this guy was just so helpful. I mean, it's just like things just fall your way. Do you ever have those days? I'm sure you do, where things just happen in your favor. And the guy, he was just so. He said, actually, there's a flight that leaves at 9:40. Well, he didn't give us the time. He said, there's a flight that leaves right now, that's leaving in a little bit. And we said, fine. He says, I'm gonna check your bag on that flight, and then you can go to the gate. And when you get to your destination, you will retrieve your bag based on that flight, that 9:00 flight, 9:40 flight, whatever. And we said, fine. So we head on. At that terminal, you had to get on a train. You had to do a whole bunch of stuff. We did not realize how soon the flight was about to leave. So we just took our time, and once we were approaching the gate, I stopped at the news convenience store. I wanted to buy some stuff, water and whatever. And we just took our time. So we got to the gate, and I was going to just sit there and wait. My husband said, why don't you just ask? Because the agent told us that, they'll call our names or something about that in the flight. It didn't click. So we got to the gate, and I went to the agent, and I said, Mr. and Mrs. Linox, and I believe we were on this flight. And she looked, and guess what? She already had our boarding passes ready for us to board. She already had it ready. As a matter of fact, she already had her boarding passes ready. Now, if we had taken our time, because remember, we had to take a train, and it's just far. This airport is just really big and complicated. Not complicated, but you just have to take a train and then you walk a long distance. And this was gate number 93 in terminal. I forgot which terminal it was, maybe terminal B or so. And the thing is, we got there just in time when they started to board. Now, we got there in time when they started to board. They were able to get us seats together because evidently the guy at the special service desk, he could not assign seats because he's not working at the departure gate. But he said I guess he put our names in right away when we talked about it, hoping that we would get to the gate. But he didn't express any kind of urgency or anything like that. So anyway, we got to the gate, and she had the boarding passes ready. She had us seats together, and good seats, mind you. She had us seated together. So we got on the flight. The flight was great. We got home like at noon, 12 o'clock. Now, I checked the 5 o'clock flight, the 5:15 flight that we were scheduled to be on. The one, which tickets I originally had for that flight. That flight was delayed until 11 o'clock. That flight did not leave that city until 11:20 or something like that, 11:20. We would have gotten home at 2 something, almost 3 o'clock that morning. Imagine that. We would have gotten home because, if you're on the flight and it's delayed, the flight is not going. So you can't, it's not like, you or other people are booked on the earlier flight. So it's not like you can just say, well, I'll just go on. No, our flight, the one that we were scheduled to come back on, was delayed. So if my husband hadn't said, why don't we try to get on an earlier flight? You see, all of those things is synchronicity. It just happens in your favor. And that is the kind of life you want to have. When you are in tune, when you are aligned, when you are operating in the same vibrational frequency with, it comes from within out. It's not things that comes from external in. It's the desires that you have in your heart, is the things that you want to happen. And when you align it, when you align it as a not even as a possibility, but when you affirm that it's done, and you just walk in that peace and calm and knowing that it's done, that's where you create the life that you desire. That's when you continue to create. Now, this may seem like a small thing, but let me tell you something. When you get home from being gone for that long on, at noon, at 12 o'clock, as opposed to, and as a matter of fact, when we got home, when we got to the airport, our bag was on the same flight that we were on. So we didn't have to wait for bags or anything. But when you operate in that type of mindset, when you operate in that kind of energy, when your frequency starts vibrating with the things that you desire, I'm telling you, you begin to attract. You attract the things that you want. You birth it. You birth it from within. And the desires that you have, the desires that you have already exists in a future version of yourself. So the things that you desire, the things that you want, the things that you have aspirations for already exist. That is the reason why you desire it, because it already exists. It already exists and it's waiting for you, for your energy to align with it. And once they align, sometimes you say, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this to happen. Or, oh, this is a miracle. No, it is alignment. That's why even your relationships, even the relationships that we have, we must be in alignment. I am coming to realize that any relationship that you have that you are out of alignment with, any relationship that you are out of alignment with, it's almost a non-functioning relationship. In order to understand that, you have to see people as people and not as relational. What do I mean by that? Your uncle, your cousin, your mother, your father, your husband, your children, adult children, your auntie, every human being is an entity unto themselves. Now, you can carry your relationships on an emotional level, and you will say that, well, it's my auntie, I can't do this, or I can't tell her no, or it is or I've got to go, it's my uncle's birthday, blah blah. And what you do is that you betray yourself, you betray your authenticity because of an emotional relationship. You betray your author, and this is not easy, because most relationships we have, especially with our genetic families and so forth, siblings and so forth, they're emotional, and it's not easy to separate their humanity from the emotions we have for them. We see our auntie as auntie, not as a person with human elements, human attributes, emotions and characteristics and so forth. So we will always make excuse to go to auntie's birthday party, or your as a matter of fact, I heard this woman, she has two sons, and she over the holiday, evidently neither one of them invited her to join them and their families for the Thanksgiving. And she was feeling so awful. She was feeling, she kept waiting. And it's one of those things where, she knows that there is love between them. She loved her son. She loved her sons, and they love her and so forth. But again, they're human. They're people with attributes and characteristics and, a life of their own. And they may have their own thing going on. And comes Thanksgiving Eve, and she still had not heard from neither one of them. And she said she sat by the phone until like midnight. She thought it could have been an oversight, but then there are two. Imagine if one forgot, and it's not like they both live together. They both have their own families and so forth. And on Thanksgiving morning, she was so sure that they would call and say, "Mom, we're coming to pick you up." Well, neither one of them called. They did not call, and not even to wish her a happy Thanksgiving. Imagine that, not even to wish her a happy Thanksgiving. And she was devastated. And at that moment, she said that she made a decision. That's when she began to realize that even though they have a good relationship and they, love each other and whatever, she is not a priority in their lives. Sad to say, but that's the reality of it. she began to realize that, in all the things that as a matter of fact, she said she had gone out and bought Christmas gifts. She did early Christmas shopping, and I guess Black Friday or whatever, and she bought gifts for each one of them, their spouse, the kids, and all of that. She had all of that. And then she realized that she is not a priority in their lives. She said she just sat there by the phone, hoping that the phone would ring, and she just cried and cried and cried and cried. And then she had some soup and just called it a day. So do you see that even though we have emotional connection with people, they are still people. And in order to protect your peace, you have to make decisions sometime that, look, the relationship, the emotional attachment that I have with my, whether it's siblings or family members or whatever, we have to recognize that they are people. This way you protect your own peace and you don't get angry, because they may be, you cannot get angry with the people that are not on the same timeline with you. You can't. Just like I said earlier, one of the boundaries that I set for myself is to stay out of people's business. And if I realize I'm not a priority in your life, that is okay. Then I have to take whatever measure it is to protect my peace. And part of protecting my peace is not to get angry at you. Why? Because it would create chaos in my mind, in my own sphere. And I need it to be peaceful so that I can function from that point out of peace. And when I have peace, my thoughts begin to align or focus on aligning with the things that I want, the things that I desire, the things that are important to me, my health, my mental stability, the things that I want, even relational things. But I always put a pin in all of that because that could change. When it has to do with anyone on the outside of you, that could change because not everyone is on the same timeline with you. And I've come to realize that even relationships, not everyone is on the same timeline with you. And it doesn't mean that you are on a higher level or no, you're on different levels. You're on different timeline. You have different stages of awakening. You know different things at different time. That's why I set myself up to be curious and to remain open-minded so that I can learn things. Sometimes I hear things that I don't even, it doesn't even resonate with me. I cannot even relate to it, but you listen with a curious mind. And then sometimes I would come home and just go look things up and just to have information, but it may not be my time to, to navigate that level yet. So I can't be critical of the other person. I can't be jealous of where they are. I can't envy what they have or how they live or no, because I'm in a different timeline. They're in a different timeline. And when you recognize that, those are the boundaries that I set for myself to make sure that I respect other people's, and some people, they are not interested in any kind of growth, in any kind of evolution. And for those people like that are in your life, the relationship changes. And that is okay. We have to get away from that whole thing of attachment, because this whole emotional attachment, that's why people suffer. That's why people suffer, because they are attached to things and people and customs and tradition and all of that. They want to keep things the way it has always been. When I coach people, I don't coach you for comfort. I coach you so that, as a matter of fact, your comfort zone would be terrified of your evolution. It's not to make you, it's not to motivate you, because motivation is nothing. You can be motivated today and then tomorrow you are just back to your self. anxious, depressed, fearful, worrying, and all of that. So I'm not here to motivate. I'm here to uh, uh, transform, to inspire transformation so that your life can be transformed. But your mind has to be renewed before you can transform into the version of the person you desire to be. And let me tell you, one thing that I do know is that all of us, we desire to be well. We desire to be provided for, and we desire to be happy. That's basic. That is a fundamental desire of every human being. And then there are those of us that desire even more. Why? Because that's the way we are wired. We are wired for growth, for development, for increase. To magnetize the things that are our birthright, and to recognize that the things that belongs to us, our birthright, to walk in that fullness of self, confidence, and assurance, energetic sovereignty. You're designed for that. But we've been told so for so long, and then we get to believe it, that you are not worthy. And people try to shrink you. They tell you to stay humble, not to be boastful. And when you express joy and happiness, if you get something, they call it arrogance. And then you try to shrink so that you don't. As a matter of fact, we were on when we were on the ship, we met this family, beautiful family, and two girls, and they're all swim expert. They're athletes, they're swimmers, but I mean swimmers on an Olympic level, and they're going for the Olympics and so forth. And the dad was sharing with us all the medals and the things they won and how great they are. They're like 2 years apart, and he was talking about because I mentioned, or I said something like, I bet they are just equally great in school, academically. And he said, yes, Anna or Ayana is an A student, and her sister tries to mimic her. So she works hard to keep up with the older sister. And he was talking about all the accolades that they receive from their swimming competition and so forth, and how they travel all over the states to compete. And he says, and one thing we tell them is to stay humble. So, I had to restrain myself and put that boundary on myself so that I don't get into my thing, because what I think about humility. It's all a farce. Anyway, so I said to the younger girl, and I said, but you must own it. I said, when you have a win, I said, it's good to own it. And then I start talking about Coco Gauff, when she won the championship against, her opponent. I think it was at, not Wimbledon, Forest Hill, New York, I think it was. And Coco owned it. She said, I had to work hard. She says, I knew that I was not the favorite, but I work hard. She says, not only physically, but mentally. And she took it and she kissed it. And she says, she did not even say this is for the team. She says, this is mine. I won this. And I admire that simply because she was confident. Here she is, 19 years old. And she says, I won this. She says, I had to work. And she says, in my mind, I had to create a frame where I saw myself holding this trophy before I even started the game, before the game was even scheduled. I saw myself holding it. And she owned it. She owned her win. So then the daddy said, yes, but I tell them to be humble, and when they have a win, to just just accept it, and whatever. And then he said, but at home, between them, they're competitive, and they talk, and they this and that, and they do this, and they compete with each other, and they talk about how great they are and so forth. So by then, of course, I knew that what they showed to the world was a performance. It was a performance, because on the inside they were happy for themselves, and they were self-expressive at home with, amongst themselves. They were their true selves, to express their happiness and so forth, and acknowledge, recognize their win. But when they're out, he wants them to show humility, to be humble. So as you can see, that was a performative type uh, behavior. That was a performative type concept. You at home you're one way, but outside you express something else. It's performative. It's not real. It's not authentic. And that is what I see. When you're like that in one area, then your whole life is conducted uh, based on performance. Your whole life is based on performance. It's performative. And that is what you don't want to get yourself in, that type of behavior. Because let me tell you something, the thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, your thoughts turn into feelings. Your feelings translate into, of course, emotions and so forth. And then your behavior, your actions. And your actions is what, when I know that I am going someplace or planning something or whatever, I begin to act as if it's already done. So when you have fear of something, that's why they say the thing I greatly feared has come upon me. Because when you express that, when you begin to act fearful, it's because you have already thought about it. That's already been resident in your mind. Fear of whatever it is. The same with joy, the joy of assumption, of expectations. It's like when you summon something, when you command something, when you realize and acknowledge that you are the one that create. How? By the emotional vibration that you emit. And whatever you emit is what aligns with what's already there, what's already in the universe. And that thing begins to find you. Here we are. I'm, in my mind, getting ready for a day at the Admiral's Club at the airport terminal. And my husband is thinking of, and he said, and I said, what made you think of even suggesting an earlier flight? He said, well, so many things can happen. There's so many variables. And he said, weather and so forth, and he looks at all kind of stuff that I sometimes don't even consider. And that's so good, because that's why we work as a team, as partners. What he sees, I may overlook, and vice versa. So I'm thinking of spending a nice day at the Admiral's Club, and I'm thinking of, they have a whole lot of food and snacks and whatever. And I'm thinking that we're going to have a fantastic time at the Admiral's Club. And he's thinking, I wish we could get home earlier. And as he thought of it, that's evidently what was in his mind. He wanted to be able to get home earlier, just in case there are any hiccups happening, anything that, and as a result, there was a delay. Imagine from 5 to 11 o'clock. That's a big old delay. Who knows? I mean, the Admiral's Club, I guess they would have kept it open, because you can't kick people out, at 10 o'clock. But that's besides the point. Once you have been gone for so long, you want to get home to your bed. And those were his thoughts, and my thoughts were different. And he expressed his, and it's like what was out there aligned with what his vibrational energy emitted. That frequency found what was there waiting for us, and it just aligned and it happened. It happened. So we were home early, early, early. It happened. And that's what I'm saying to you, my friend. You can align your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and then you would have the and what it does, it takes away desperation, fear, chaos. But sometimes the reason things doesn't work out is because in our minds we create chaos. One day we are encouraged. The next day we are depressed. We are wondering as to how it's going to happen. I don't, when I desire something, I don't think of the how. All I know is this is what I desire. This is what I expect. This is what I summon. I command, and I expect it to happen. I expect it to happen. Your expectations, it just happens. In anything, everything. It's a whole different dynamics. But I always say, discover what works for you. You see, I discover what works for me. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying to you that you have it within you. Once you get rid of all traditional narrative and religious indoctrination, the narrative, learn the truth, because that is the truth that will set you free. Learn the truth. And once you start walking in that, your truth becomes sweet. Your health start flourishing. You can talk yourself into health. Whatever it is that you're dealing with. But you see, if you remain closed-minded and you reject being curious about what's out there because you're so stuck in your limiting beliefs, it's strong. These belief systems are strong. And what happens is that as you believe, it shapes your identity. It shapes your identity. And you again, it just shapes your identity. And you function as such. And come to find out, it's not the identity that's really you. It's the identity that was shaped, that was formed based on all the external influences, programming, uh, conditioning. All of that is what shaped the identity that you're living in now. And until you start designing your real identity, you will always fall short. Why? Because you're living, in essence, a lie. The person that's not really you. Those things that you really desire, you kind of resist. Why? Because it goes against the grain. It goes against the collective. It goes against the norm. We have to step away from that, my friend. We have to step away from that and step into the area of creativity. Know who you are, journey into authenticity, and live the life that you are meant to live, the life that you desire. I'm going to leave you with that so that you can sup on that. Every Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, I am right here. You can tune in. If you can't meet me at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, you see the icons down here, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can pick up the show 24/7. In the meantime, again, you can always DM me. You can always send me an email at info at thecynthialinoxshow.com. I am also a transformational life coach. I am a transformational identity architect. And I will walk alongside with you, help you plan, design, and rebuild the identity that is actually yours. So, until next Thursday, same time, same place, I'm going to say Tata, have a fantastic weekend. I know a lot of you may be shopping and doing all of that, but whatever you choose to do, make sure that you're just juicing it, getting gusto out of life unapologetically. See you next week, my friend. Ciao.